Most people think that reaching the top 1% is all about luck or knowing the right people or being in the right place at the right time, but it's not. In this video, I'm gonna break down exactly what it takes to be in the top 25%, 10, 5, 2, and 1% of wealthy people in the United States. Stick around until the end because not only will you understand where you currently stand, but I'm gonna cover the 3 habits that I see that are very consistent across all top earners in the US. And listen, what most people don't understand is that the gap between where most people are at right now and the top 1% is not just about an income gap or a money gap. It's about an information gap, an education gap, systems and a structure gap. The top 1% did not get there by luck. They got there because they have been very intentional about how they're managing their money and their cash flow and understand the importance of systems and structure in their life when it comes to their money. When they get a raise or they get a promotion, their first thought is not to spend more or increase their lifestyle. Their first thought is, how can I save more? Where can I invest more? And how can I get more of this money working for me every single year so I can reach that top 1% status or whatever it is that your goals are set out for. Financial independence does not come easy, but it does come with hard work, dedication, consistency, and constantly being willing to make the right decision when it comes to your money. Stick around until the end because the 3 habits that are consistent across all high income earners alone are worth your time. Before we really get into the numbers of each tier, I want to start by addressing something that shapes how almost everybody thinks about wealth but gets completely wrong. There is a survey by Charles Schwab that was very interesting around how Americans believe that you need about $2.5 million to feel wealthy. But in order to feel financially comfortable, you need about $778,000. So what's interesting about that is we're consistently raising the bar around what it takes to be considered wealthy, but we're lowering the bar on what we need to feel comfortable financially. That's a really interesting topic. And I think it tells you a lot about how we're all relating to money right now. Another interesting fact is that the average net worth in the US is just over $1 million on paper. But the median net worth is $192,000. That's the actual middle point where half of households sit above that number and half sits below. And that's because the higher income earners, their wealth is so significant that it really skews the actual average and shows you that averages can often be misleading when it comes to these types of numbers or statistics. Unfortunately, wealth is not equally distributed. It's concentrated highly in the top 10% of the population. And ultimately, that statistic alone is why I love doing what I do and helping people to continue to help people. It's why I started my YouTube channel. I know that on YouTube, I can help way more many people and they can get this type of education for free than I could just one-on-one. All right, let's talk about the different tiers. We're gonna start with the top 25%, what we refer to as the stable foundation. The net worth range of the top 25% is between $340,000 and $500,000, and the average income is around $95,000. This is where a lot of our hard-working middle class, our teachers, our nurses, our engineers, dual income households that have been consistently saving and doing their best to invest for their future. We're not talking about Wall Street salaries or some sort of a startup exit, but this is where dedication to consistency around managing your money really starts to show. But it's very common for the population in this tier to still feel very financially fragile. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because in many cases, a lot of their net worth in this tier is tied up in illiquid assets, home equity, retirement accounts, and savings that are earmarked for something specific. So if something comes up as an emergency that's unexpected, that can really throw this population off. This tier is still overly anxious about a job loss or a medical bill or a necessary home repair that costs way more than they could have ever planned for or thought of. And that's why the foundational work in this part of the population is not about investing strategies, it's about stability. An emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses is literally the foundation and the lifeline of the health of this part of the population's financial livelihood. And the people who break out of this tier, it's not because all of a sudden they're making a ton of money. It's because they've set systems and foundations in place in their financial lives, and they've stayed consistent long enough to get them to that next tier. That next tier being the top 10%. The top 10%, this is the asset-rich but cash-constrained part of our population. The net worth range here is about $970,000 to about $1.9 million in net worth, and the average income is about $173,000. On paper, the top 10% looks comfortable. Doctors, lawyers, senior execs. These are people who've been earning really well for years and have the assets and a lot to show for it. But here's what might be surprising to those looking in at the top 10%. A lot of their net worth is illiquid, like I mentioned for the top 20%, but on a different level. So in many cases, their wealth is tied up in real estate, which is not liquid. You cannot just go to the bank with a debit card and pull out money against the equity in your property. Or retirement accounts, where if you pull out money from a 401k early, the IRS will annihilate you with fees, taxes, penalties, you name it. And so this top 10% of the population, while on paper they look really well off, and in many ways they are, they're still stressed because they're cash poor. So it's very common for those in this percentage of the population to still feel stressed and to not actually feel wealthy because their wealth is tied up in areas that don't benefit them from a day-to-day basis. They still don't know what it's like to be sitting on $500,000 of liquid cash or in a non-retirement account. So they're really working every day to find that breathing room, to find that comfortability that these other tiers have already earned. And moving from the top 10% to the top 5% requires a very specific shift. It's not just earning more, but it's completely restructuring how your money is deployed so that you're intentionally deploying them, utilizing good debt into cash flowing producing assets. That's when you stop relying on just yourself to go to work and make money, and now your assets are also bringing money and income into your lives every single month. So welcome to the top 5%. That's where this strategy shift happens. The net worth here is about 1.1 to 3 million, and the average income is about $340,000. This is where the psychology of money changes the most drastically. At the top 5%, income alone does not buy freedom, because you've seen enough that every time you make more money, there's more stress, there's more bills involved. It doesn't buy you freedom. Income alone is not your wealth. This is where the conversation moves from how do I make more money in my career or my job to how do I position my money better and build assets that are going to appreciate and bring income into my life every day, regardless if I wake up and go to work. That's the real difference. That's where financial freedom really comes into play. So starting to really understand how to leverage good debt into cash flowing producing assets is a big part of being inside the top 5%. Most people in this bracket are in their 40s or older because they've used their 30s, which is a really important decade to build wealth, to be very intentional about where they're making money, how they're making money. They understand tax structures and business structures, and they're really starting to utilize different areas of a financial plan and understand how one decision over here can really impact the other over here. But now this percentage of the population understands how various places inside of your financial plan can not only communicate with one another, but also benefit one another. The question starts to change from how do I grow this to how do I protect this? And that's not a pessimistic question. It's actually the first sign of real financial maturity. I learned in the psychology of money that one of the most important parts of building wealth is learning to stop moving the needle, stop moving the finish line. Find a number that makes sense to where you can be financially comfortable and independent when it comes to your investments and your revenue and your passive income, and work towards that number. Now let's move to the top 2% and the top 1%. This category is the ownership and ecosystem. The top 2% net worth is between $2.7 and $5 million, and the average income is around $500,000. At the top 2%, this is where we're looking at entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, seasoned investors who've really figured out the system and know how to stay disciplined and consistent. Wealth at this level is discipline, it's not a destination. The focus really becomes tax efficiency, strategic diversification, and legacy, not just growth. This is where generational wealth really starts to take place. But this tier also comes with a complexity that most people don't think about. Decision fatigue, the pressure to sustain what's built, the responsibility of managing an ecosystem of assets. There's a lot of responsibility that comes along with that. It's not just a simple investment portfolio that we're talking about anymore. It's typically a portfolio of real estate, a portfolio of different types of investment accounts. There's a lot to manage at this tier. And this is where this strategy becomes that much more important, because what people don't realize, it's very hard to build wealth, but it's not as hard to lose it. That brings us to the top 1%. The net worth range here is between 11 and $13 million. That's the top 1% of wealth in our country here. And here's what the data actually shows about the top 1%. They didn't inherit their way to the top, they built it through ownership, consistency, discipline, sacrifice. real estate portfolios developed over decades. They really understand the power of compounding interest and time. The common thread here is not just a single big break. It's a long series of very strategic, intentional, systematic decisions and how to allocate their money over time. And at this level, their money is genuinely working much harder than they are. And they've earned that. They've completely shifted from having to earn to now just completely managing their ecosystem of assets. This is where early retirement can come into play. I mean, this is the goal, this is the vision. Their time is protected, their decisions are leveraged, and their income is largely completely independent of the hours that they put in. Getting to this level of wealth may seem completely out of touch, but I promise you it's not as far off as it may seem, but it does take dedication and the willingness to sacrifice short-term, immediate gratification for this type of a future. Now listen, as of the middle of 2025, there are roughly 24 million millionaires in the United States. 300,000 of which were new millionaires in the year 2024 alone. But the research shows consistently that there's a common thread with these types of individuals. They're not flashy. They're not constantly posting on social media about their rich lifestyles and have the most expensive cars or the largest homes. The common thread here is the dedication over a series of decades to make good financial decisions. And one of the most important factors here is they do not rely on one single income. They understand the importance of building income streams that they're able to continue to multiply over time. One income stream is a single point failure. Anything could go wrong and that income stream goes to zero. What would you do if that were to happen? The best thing that you could do right now is put a plan in place that you are working towards building other income streams in your lives so that you are never in a situation where your entire livelihood and financial plan is completely at risk. If you lose your job, if something happens to your health and you can't work or deliver on the performance that you have in the past, don't keep yourself in that situation. Here are the 3 habits that separate the builders from the earners. Number 1, clarity before growth. Every single wealthy person that I've ever worked with knows exactly what their net worth is. They know exactly where every dollar goes every month. They are tracking things with spreadsheets, now with AI tools. They're not guessing. That's one of the first things that I would fix. If you're sitting there, you don't know your net worth, you don't have a budget, you don't track where you're spending your money, fix that immediately. Number 2, they have an equity mindset. A lot of building wealth is how you view money, how you think about money. They've made a fundamental, intentional shift from thinking about income to thinking about ownership. They're not just trading time for money every single day. They're building assets that generate money while they sleep. A business, real estate position, an investment portfolio with meaningful size, an idea that produces royalties. The shift to I need to own more is one of the most important mental shifts that there is. And it doesn't require $1 million to start. It requires a change in how you think about where your money is going. And number 3, time leverage. They build systems, investments, teams, automation. They pay themselves first. They automate their investments. Before their money hits their bank account, money is deployed into their cash flowing producing assets and investment portfolios that literally keep compounding when they step away. All these things are happening regardless. They remove their personal emotion around their money and their spending. Money hits your bank account, we find a way to spend it. We want to avoid getting in our own way as much as we possibly can. Every serious wealth builder understands that time is the one resource that we can never replace. Once the time has passed, it's gone forever. And time is your best friend when it comes to building wealth. It is your number 1 asset. The sooner that you get started on this path and having structure and systems in place, the better off you're gonna be. Now listen, I know that this is all much easier said than done, but I can promise you that making the decision to take your financial plan more seriously, to start to challenge how you view money, start to envision yourself in the top 1% with the houses, and the income and the revenue, and start to make a conscious effort and dedicate towards making better financial decisions. If you're sitting there right now and you know that you could be doing better with your plan, if you're a higher income earner and you have some money, you have investments, but you don't know how they communicate with another, there might be some gaps, there's some inefficiencies, and if you feel like you have plateaued in where you are able to get yourself financially, then click the link in the description and apply for my 90-day financial planning program. The program is meant to give you a crash course on how to optimize your cash flow, how to make sure money is going into the right buckets, stop losing money and access to money every year by putting it in the wrong place. We're gonna assess every single gap that you have in your financial life, and we're gonna give you tools and systems that you can take with you forever. Now, if you're not there, and if you're at a little bit more of a beginner stage, stay tuned and watch my next video on financial literacy, which is a beginner's guide to understanding how to think about money, how to manage your money, and tangible steps that you can take right now to putting yourself in a better financial decision. Don't wait. This is all up to you. You have the power to make a difference.